Let's get into it. Coach Colin here. Man, I always end up in the weirdest rabbit holes whenever I am going through the whole Joe Rogan thing like I always do. And in this clip, I heard Lucas Nelson talk about AI's tax on the planet. And I've been hearing a little bit here and there about what AI actually does in regards to the planet and energy consumption, but I decided to research it a little bit, and I found some very interesting things. Now, I'm going to be showing you a few clips, including one family that is going through basically not being able to live in their house because they live near one of Meta's data centers. Very odd. Then I decided to jump down a rabbit hole a little more and say, what if the energy consumption of AI keeps steadily going up the next 20 years? What does that scenario look like for us? I'm going to have Grok actually tell you about that. How ironic is that? Grok is going to explain that to you at the end. And in between, I'm just going to show you some stuff that's going on because I didn't realize what AI, these data centers that fuel these AI programs, is actually doing to the planet. It's very, very interesting and a little bit horrifying if it's not put in check, like everything in regards to AI. Let's jump in.
They found the area where it was. They also found a Russian factory that was making an enormous nuclear submarine. They found it, accurately described it, the dimensions of it. They knew where it was, and it was an accurate location. Not just the thing that was being hidden, but where it was, the dimensions of it. I don't dismiss it.
I can't dismiss anything. I just know that, like, when I looked up, like, UFO experiences and, like, you know, this disclosure stuff that's happening lately, and you know, I mean, I'm a huge, I'm not just a believer. I pray that there is someone out there disarming nuclear missiles, as you know, especially right now. Like, you know, my great hope is that there is someone just trying to, like, you know, not step in, but oversee it to the point where hopefully we can survive to a point of having an interstellar civilization. You know, it would be, it's the great dream of humanity, right? You know.
Sure, but we have to be a different civilization than we are now.
Oh, 100%.
Otherwise, we're going to do the same.
That's the thing, is that, and that's what I was always, even before Elon was as famous as he is now, when I was like 15, I read his book, and the one thing that I'm a friend of.
What was his book?
He read, it was like a book about him, maybe.
Oh, okay.
But and I don't remember. But what I really wanted the focus to be on was, let's put all these resources into getting this planet right first. Let's put everything we have. And, you know, it felt at the time like, okay, well, yes, we're spending all this money to go off, and maybe we're hopeless. It's possible that we're hopeless, and it sounds like that's where they err on this. You know, it's like, oh, well, humanity on Earth is just over. We just have to go somewhere else. But then if we go somewhere else, we're just going to do the same thing, like you're saying. Yeah. So, like, all of the resources, in my opinion, should be focused on, like there's devices that they have invented that can be put in river mouths around the world to filter out pollution and plastics going into the ocean, right? And it's like this incredible technology. If the budgets were spent towards these innovations, you know, and maybe AI will help it. You know, right now AI is kind of a tax on the planet in terms of, like, you know, it's not very good for it. But maybe the AI technology itself will then invent something that makes itself more efficient for the planet.
What do you mean by AI as a tax?
Well, because the energy required for the servers and all of that is so you know, it drains a lot of resource. Right. And so, but what AI may do is help us create, like, an ion battery or something that makes energy give off less. You know, you can have this much more energy with way less heat and way less. You know, and so then you can create, you know, instead of having to have giant warehouses full of servers, you can have just, you know, it's the same stuff that happened with the computer, know, where the computer required a giant building when it was first created, and now you have computers smaller than a.
Just to be clear, Elon's position is not that Earth is like that humans are helpless or hopeless, and we have to just leave Earth. It's not that. It's that life is so fragile here because of the possibility not just of us working it out, but of natural disasters, and that we need to become interstellar in order to propagate life and to survive. And so we can carry on this
Yeah.
growth that we're involved in
Sure.
as a human species. Because
Okay.
there's, I mean, they just, what was the number that they just found? A bunch of new asteroids? Like, the possibility of us being hit by a near-Earth object is extremely high over the next X amount of hundreds of years. It's extremely high. And these things might not wipe everything out, but they'll start civilization all over again. They'll
Sure.
bring us back to cave people. So the idea was that the more places that we are, the more likelihood that the human race survives. It's not just that we're
So,
going to f this up.
And I appreciate wanting the human race to survive. Don't get me wrong. You know,
But it should be better than it is now.
I want us to learn our lessons on this planet.
Yeah.
And I think that that's even more important than surviving. I mean, here's the thing. When you ask yourself, when someone asks themselves, have I lived a life worth living? Is a life worth living someone who lives a very long time? Or is a life worth living someone who's lived a good life and maybe for shorter? So what is the ultimate effect that humanity has on the natural world and environment? Do we deserve to be spacefaring? And if we do, then I say let's go. But I mean, I think
Deserved by whose judgment, though?
Well, I mean,
Well,
by my own individual judgment at this point, you know.
But I mean, are we better than the lions who killed the gazelles?
No, but the
They're
lions, all the natural world works cyclically. The way that the lion kills the gazelle and the way that the alligator takes the
Tourist?
Yeah, exactly. Everything works with balance in nature. You have just enough give and take. It's worked that way for years, and then yes, extinction events happen, and then things die out. But there has never been a creature on the planet with the ability like we have to take as much resource as we can without replenishing that or balancing that out.
Right.
So we, I think, have a responsibility as humanity to understand how to balance ourselves with and harmonize with nature. And I think that's where my great hope is that we figure out how to find a cyclical arrangement with nature, where just like photosynthesis, just like plants give us oxygen, and then the carbon dioxide we breathe, and the plants then sequester.
Well, our disconnection to nature might be
And he got him with that. Joe tried to bring that regular argument that Joe has. He's like, the lion with the gazelle. He's like, hold on. That's true. In nature, in the jungle, it's all working perfectly, right? They never just eat something to extinction, but sometimes wolves will just go overboard. They do like a frenzy type thing where they just go nuts. There is that, but even that is actually something that happens when deer, I'm pretty sure it's deer, tend to have a high population. They all of a sudden, something in them goes, it's frenzy time. And they bring the numbers down just a little bit, not even much. They don't go super crazy. It's not hundreds in a day, but so he's actually right there. I like what he's saying. And when I heard that whole thing of attacks on the planet, I was like, what does he mean? Because I could tell, this is Willie Nelson's son. He's a little bit of a hippie. You could tell he's a little bit of a lefty. You could tell just by the whole conversation that they had, but he's a very open-minded guy. And I like the stuff that he was saying. So I started looking into it a little bit. This was the first thing that I found. I found this very interesting. Somebody saying that big tech companies like Amazon are becoming energy companies. Amazon just acquired a nuclear-powered data center, which I did not know, for $650 million from Texas Talon Energy. This comes a month after Amazon locked down 100 megawatt agreement with a wind farm in Oregon. Go down a little bit more. We are reaching a point of singularity where tech companies are becoming energy companies. Energy companies should be becoming tech companies as well, but they're sleeping at the wheel. Now, what this gentleman, high performance computing, is energy infrastructure, whether it's Bitcoin mining or GPU clusters for artificial intelligence. Now, basically, he is a guy that works in energy companies, and he's basically just trying to paint the picture to people in his industry that, hey, we're asleep at the wheel. We should be becoming tech companies. But that first statement that companies like Amazon, Meta, they're becoming energy companies. That was something I never thought of before. So, of course, down the rabbit hole a little more. What is this exact tax on the planet? Listen to this.
Find out a few days ago that Meta, Facebook, announces largest ever data center. You know what? You know what happened with this whole thing? They decided not to use atomic power for this thing. Instead, they're going to have a 3-cycled combined combustion turbine plant, 2.262 gigawatts, and it's going to burn natural gas. Natural gas. Let's do some math, shall we? I love doing math together. It turns out that if you convert all of this stuff, Facebook is going to be burning 18 billion cubic feet per month. Okay. On a monthly basis, the United States is producing about 3 trillion cubic feet because it's producing about 100 billion cubic feet per day. Times 30 gets us to 3 trillion. So when we do the math, we find out that 18 billion cubic feet turns into about 0.5% of total U.S. natural gas production is going to go to just this one data center. That's 0.5% is 1/200th of total daily, monthly, yearly natural gas production in the United States is going to go to power a data center. One. You know how many of these data centers are going in right now? Who's asking where all that electricity is going to come from? Well, I'll tell you what, they're already making decisions. You know what? We can just use natural gas. We'll just use natural gas. We'll just put in a 2.2 gigawatt gas plant. And by the way, these gas plants, they run 24/7 for a data center. Data centers don't have sort of a nighttime load and a daytime fall off and load or anything like that. They have just constant. This thing's going to be just, if it needs 2.2 gigawatts, it's probably going to be burning 2 gigawatts constantly. 0.5%. So as soon as we get like 10 of these, we'll be burning 5% of total natural gas production. It's just going to go to these 10 data centers, right? It's just astonishing. There's so much more to unpack here. Head on.
Okay, so that was just a little bit of the math that I found. Then I found Mark Zuckerberg talking about what he's actually done. Now, this is actually at the end of 2024. I just decided, as we're talking to Grok, I'm actually going to ask how much water Tesla, XAI, Meta, and Amazon use per day, because the numbers are actually pretty astonishing. But then we also have to ask how much of that water gets recycled, and we'll see what that number is. I'm not really sure, but listen to this.
Last big AI update of the year. Our goal at Meta is to build general intelligence and open source it so that way everyone benefits. Meta AI now has nearly 600 million monthly actives, and as promised, is on track to be the most used AI assistant in the world by the end of the year. If you haven't gotten a chance to try voice mode yet, try it. It's awesome. Now, I started 2024 talking about how we had a bunch of H100s and that this was going to be a big year for open source AI. And it has been. Llama has quickly become the most adopted model with more than 650 million downloads, and it is starting to become an industry standard. We have one more release for the year. Llama 3.3 is a new 70 billion parameter text model that performs about as well as our 405 billion parameter model, but now it is easier and more efficient to run. So that is the last Llama 3 release. The next stop is Llama 4. And if we started the year talking about the size of our clusters for training Llama, I want to start to wrap the year by doing the same. We just announced that we were building a 2 gigawatt plus data center in Louisiana that we're going to use to train future versions of Llama. We are in this for the long term, and we are committed to building the most advanced AI in the world. All right. Thank you for a great year.
Man, Mark Zuckerberg. They're becoming energy companies. This is something that I never even thought of. And would you look at him, eh? Look at this guy. Happiest lizard you ever did see. He's not like the other ones. He's happy with his lizard DNA. I like him. Out of all the guys, he's the most trustworthy looking one, out of all of them. He's at least a little bit trustworthy, He has the non-threatening hair going on, a little bit of style, nice gold chain all the time. Mark Zuckerberg. But let's move on, because these people are actually near one of their data centers. I believe it's in Virginia. And this is what happens to their household when one of these data centers comes near it. Keep this in mind. If you're hearing anything on the local level that there's going to be a data center near your house, this could become your fate.
This is our cold water pressure in the kitchen. This is where I fill up water for storage. Those are the things we have to fill up to flush the toilets.
So you can see the sediment from the data center. Wow, and that's just from the water coming out of your faucet.
Yeah, and this is what's in all the pipes.
Just the well itself is probably $20,000, and that's not counting any of the
All the
faucets.
replacement
Yeah.
of the fixtures and
That's
faucets
just
and
the well.
toilets and the lines that come underneath the house. It's overwhelming because you really feel like you are up against this huge wall that you can't penetrate. There's nothing that you can do, and they don't care.
I'm here in Mansfield, Georgia, driving by Meta's new 2 million square foot data center facility. Facilities like this are being used to power things like ChatGPT and other AI tools that are becoming integrated into our daily life.
Data centers going to be a very hot item.
This entire supercomputer is built to power Grok.
We see data centers as the most exciting asset class.
Meta is building a 2 gigawatt plus data center that is so large it would cover a significant part of Manhattan.
But data centers come with big costs, from light and noise pollution to the environmental impacts to the potential rising costs of energy bills. These facilities put extraordinary demand on the power grid and require entirely new infrastructure.
Oh my God. They should be responsible for that, not us.
Search the internet for profits that Meta has made, Amazon, Microsoft. They can afford to pay for their own generation.
We came to Georgia to ask two questions. What's the true cost of the AI revolution, and who should be paying for it? Your house is here, and the data center is right there.
It's less than 400 yards.
Beverly and Jeff Morris bought their home an hour's drive from downtown Atlanta in 2016, but their roots in the community run much deeper.
Being in the country has always just been my peace and my therapy. When we found this place, we decided that this was it. It was perfect.
I was actually raised probably 5 miles from here.
So it goes silent like that at the end. But that's how close they are to this data center, and that's what it's looking like. It's very interesting. I'm trying to find this full documentary. I'm not sure who's actually doing it. I see something that says perfect.
Decided that this was it. It was perfect.
More perfect something. I'll look into that a little later. I'll let you guys know if I find it. But this is what people are dealing with when it comes to data centers being near their house. So I was wondering when I first saw this clip, I was like, why? Because I still didn't understand. Now I understand a little more, which is why I brought up the water usage. It's because these data centers take up a tremendous amount of water. Why? Because there's servers throughout these data centers. They produce a tremendous amount of heat. They need to be cooled down, and that's where the water comes in. And when I say how much of it gets recycled, that's because a certain amount of it is going to turn into vapor, because it's just, you know, when it comes up against heat, that's just what's going to happen. And I don't know what happens to the rest, quite honestly. This is a topic that's very new to me. But even the former CEO of Google had this to say.
I'm here to tell you that I honestly believe that the AI revolution is underhyped. And here's why. The arrival of this new intelligence will profoundly change our country and the world in ways we cannot fully understand. And none of us, including myself and frankly anyone in this room, is prepared for the implications of this. What's happening at the moment in our industry is that we're very, very quickly, for example, developing AI programmers. And these AI programmers will replace traditional software programmers. We're building in the next year AI mathematicians that are as good as the top level graduate students in math. This is happening very quickly. You can look at this in a number of the products. Today, you think of AI as ChatGPT, but what it really is a reasoning and planning system that we've never seen before. The implication of this is profound. In terms of the way the algorithms work, they're going to need a lot more computation than we've ever had. They're going to need a lot more energy, and I'll talk about that. What does the industry need? We need high skills immigration. We talk to you about this every day. Light touch regulation around cyber and bio threats. We can talk about that. And most importantly, we need the energy. And the numbers are profound. What we need from you, if I may say that directly, is we need energy in all forms. Renewable, non-renewable, whatever. It needs to be there, and it needs to be quickly. I and others are investing in things like fusion, which are incredible, but they're not going to arrive soon enough for the need. And I'll frame this at the end by my comments about China. So people are planning 10 gigawatt data centers. Now, just to do the translation, an average nuclear power plant in the United States is 1 gigawatt. How many nuclear power plants can we make in 1 year where we're planning this 10 gigawatt data center? Gives you a sense of how big this crisis is. Many people think that the demand of energy part that our industry takes will go from 3% to 99% of total generation. One of the estimates that I think is most likely is that data centers will require an additional 29 gigawatts of power by 2027 and 67 more gigawatts by 2030. Gives you a sense of the scale that we're talking. These things are industrial at a scale I have never seen in my life. In the terms of energy planning, the current model is mostly natural gas, peaker plants, plus renewables, and that's probably going to be the path we're going to have to follow, right, to get there, and for all the reasons that you can imagine. We have a bunch of regulatory issues around fixing the energy grid. It takes, on average, 18...
Now, you could understand why, when it came to the big, beautiful bill, that they had to make sure that there was no state level changing of laws when it came to AI companies. It's not just because of the companies and everything I was thinking of, robots going nuts and et cetera, et cetera. It's because they're becoming energy companies, and they're going to need the room to do what they have to do in regards to building these data centers and getting the energy and the water that they're going to need. This is very interesting. Again, he believes eventually it will use 99% of the world's electricity. This is not someone to be taken lightly. This is Eric Schmidt, former Google CEO. Now, we have this as well. Just to let you guys know what this is here. It's terrifying, no? You having fun? Are you having fun? Let's just get into this. These are the data center energy consumptions, okay? So 2023, there was 147. This is 4%. 2024, it went up. It was still at 4%. And 2025, it's now at 224 to 5%. 2026, 7%. And that's share of all U.S. power demand is those percentages, just so you know. Then 2027, 2028, we're at 450. That is 9%. 2029 to 2030, we're at 12%, equivalent to the electricity consumption of Norway or Sweden in 2023. So that's what's going on. This is happening right now. And when you see a guy like this, he's not warning everybody. He's just like, we need to be able to do this. He wants the way cleared, basically. He's saying we need this now. We're moving, we're not stopping, and we need to do this now. And of course, he's going to come up with the same argument of China, and you got to beat China, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is Grok. I was talking to Grok, trying to figure out voice mode. Let me just turn Grok back on here. Hey, Grok, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Grok? I was hoping you could read this passage of text that I have right now. Can you do that for me?
I'd be happy to read a passage for you. Just share the text, and I'll read it aloud in a clear, pleasant voice. What's the passage you've got?
Here it is.
All right, here we go. Reading your passage in a clear, pleasant voice. Likely scenario for the next 20 years. By 2035, in data center hubs, residential water pressure may decline 5 to 15% during peak summer months, with occasional shortages in drought years. Households might face higher bills, 10 to 20% increase, but not outright scarcity, assuming moderate efficiency gains. By 2045, without aggressive intervention, 10 to 20% of U.S. residents near data centers could experience regular water restrictions, especially in the Southwest and Southeast. Nationwide, water might not be hard to come by for most, but local crises could affect 5 to 10 million people, driven by a 3 to 4 times rise in data center water use. Best case, with rapid tech adoption and policy support, water use could stabilize, limiting residential impact to cost increases rather than availability. Worst case, if trends continue unchecked, some communities could lose reliable access, forcing relocation or reliance on bottled water, echoing challenges in places like Cape Town. That was an interesting read. Anything else you'd like me to do with this?
I would also like you to answer a question for me, which is how much water, in regards to what we're talking about right now, how much water does Meta, Amazon, and xAI use per day currently?
Based on info from the web, Meta's data centers use around 10% of a county's total water daily in places like Newton County, with one facility potentially using up to 4 million gallons per day in Mesa, Arizona. Amazon's facilities, like those in Hermiston, Oregon, used about 66.8 million gallons in 2023, which breaks down to roughly 180,000 gallons per day across those sites. For xAI, specific daily water usage figures aren't widely reported, but their Memphis data center, with 18 turbines, likely has significant cooling needs, potentially in the millions of gallons daily, depending on scale. Exact numbers vary by location and facility size, and not all data is public, so these are estimates based on available reports. Anything else you need on this?
Take the numbers that you just gave me and put them all together. How many gallons of water per day is that, potentially?
All right, let's add up the water usage estimates for Meta, Amazon, and xAI, based on what I shared. Meta's data center in Mesa, Arizona, can use up to 4 million gallons per day. Amazon's facilities in Hermiston, Oregon, averaged about 180,000 gallons per day across multiple sites in 2023. For xAI, while exact figures aren't confirmed, let's conservatively estimate their Memphis data center at around 1 million gallons per day, given its scale and typical data center cooling needs. So, that's 4 million for Meta, plus 180,000 for Amazon, plus 1 million for xAI. Adding those together, 4 million plus 1 million is 5 million, and 5 million plus 180,000 is 5,180,000 gallons per day, potentially, across these examples. Keep in mind, these are rough estimates since xAI's exact usage isn't fully documented, and numbers vary by facility. Want me to dig deeper into anything specific?
Well, I was going to ask after that, when this whole process happens, when they're using all this water, what is the percent that gets turned into vapor and how much is actually reusable? Where does all this water go? Does it just disappear into vapor? Does it go into the ground? How does that work?
Most of the water used for cooling in data centers, like those run by Meta, Amazon, and xAI, is lost as vapor through evaporative cooling systems. In these systems, water absorbs heat from servers and evaporates, with estimates suggesting up to 60 to 90% of the water turns into vapor, depending on the facility's design and local climate. This vapor often leaves the local water cycle, potentially ending up as precipitation elsewhere, like in oceans or distant regions, rather than being directly reusable locally. Of the remaining water, less than 10% is typically returned to local systems as treated wastewater, though this varies. Meta reports over 99% of its water comes from municipal sources, with less than 1% from groundwater, suggesting minimal direct groundwater impact. Some water may be reused within the facility if advanced recycling systems are in place, but this is rare, and most is either evaporated or discharged after use. There's no significant disappearance into the ground. The primary loss is evaporation, which reduces local water availability, especially in stressed areas. Want me to clarify any part of that process?
No, but let me just ask you this, because you have incredible reasoning ability. I know that's some of your main functions, reason and research and whatnot. If this goes unchecked, let's say there's no technology that is made to mitigate this or eliminate this, and this just keeps going on, what will water consumption look like for human beings in 50 years, let's say?
Without mitigation tech, water consumption for humans in 50 years could get pretty grim, especially if trends like population growth, urbanization, and data center expansion continue unchecked. Picture this: global population might hit 10 billion or more, driving demand through the roof. Think agriculture, industry, and personal use, all competing for a shrinking freshwater supply, which is already only about 3% of Earth's water. Data centers, like we talked about, could be guzzling trillions of gallons annually by then, mostly lost to evaporation, stressing local water systems in places like the Southwest or Southeast US, and globally in urban hubs. Reports I've come across suggest that without intervention, nearly half the world's population, maybe 6 billion people, could face severe water stress by 2050, with urban areas hit hardest. You'd see regular shortages, skyrocketing costs, possibly 30 to 40% higher bills, and some communities might rely on bottled water or face relocation, like what's happened in places like Cape Town. Local crises could hit tens of millions, especially where data centers cluster, as their water use could quadruple. Most of the water loss would still be evaporation from cooling systems, not returning to local cycles, which could dry out rivers and aquifers faster than they replenish. Climate change would worsen it. Droughts in some regions, floods in others, messing with predictable water access. Without tech or policy fixes, it's not just scarcity, it's inequality. Rich areas might afford solutions, while poorer ones get left high and dry. That's the trajectory if nothing changes. Want me to explore any specific angle, like what could happen in a certain region?
But yeah, very interesting stuff. I don't know. I don't know what's going to come of this. I don't know. Hopefully, I guess the real thing is AI will solve the problems that it causes, as well as solve the problems that we cause. Best case scenario, it figures it out. The data centers end up shrinking to the size of one really small room like we have today with, certain server rooms, and no water is needed at all. Best case scenario. But I don't know who's working on that. I think everybody's just going to be like, AI will solve it. I don't know if that's the best way to think. But anyways, guys, that's enough for today. It took me down a dark rabbit hole, so I had to take you down there as well. And I hope you had your tinfoil Speedo on. I am out.